California task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. Content warning. Contains discussions of racial discrimination, sexual assault, torture, lynching, and other forms of extreme violence. Contains unedited historical quotations and photographs of white supremacist hatred, torture, lynching, autopsy, and other forms of graphic violence.
Foster care systems and other forms of child welfare. And through today, Black families have faced racism in the child welfare system. Civil War, government agencies excluded Black orphans from government care and have consistently been more likely to investigate Black families. 2019, Black children accounted for roughly 14% of the child population, 23% of the foster care population. 236 The fact that child welfare agencies are more likely to investigate Black families is not because Black parents are more likely to mistreat their children, but rather due to many other factors. 137 An official study of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services found in 1996 that the disproportionality of Black children being taken from their parents and placed in foster care does not derive from inherent differences in the rates at which they are abused or neglected. Lacks the differential attention received by Black children along the child welfare service pathway. 38 Since then, some studies have found higher rates of mistreatment within Black families, but scholars have observed that these higher rates are due to the fact that Black families are more likely to be poor, and the stresses of poverty correlate with child mistreatment. 239 Care and adoption. Throughout American history, both during and for many decades after the slavery era, Black children were systematically excluded from orphanages and other resources designed to care for poor children. 240 Instead, some free Black children placed in charitable housing for unhoused or very low-income adults, where they faced abuse and were sometimes indentured into forced labor, effectively re-enslaving them. 141 Non-governmental Black child welfare organizations were sometimes established to help some Black children rejected from private and public entities that only assisted white children. 142 For example, Pittsburgh's Home for Colored Children was founded after a young Black girl, Nellie Grant, wandered the streets after being rejected from the city's childcare institutions because she was Black. 243 Scholars have argued that more Black children end up in foster care because adoption services believed that Black children were unadoptable due to the preferences of the white families which they served to adopt white children. 244 After governmental child adoption services were officially open to Black children, most were not still given the same opportunities as white families because adoption agencies catered to the preferences of white families. 45 Non-governmental agencies similarly excluded Black children by catering to the private adoption market, which was largely affluent and white. 46 When these adoption institutions failed to place Black children with families, they blamed the children and stigmatized them as unadoptable. 47 Government systems that take children from caregivers believed to be unfit and place them in other environments designed to ensure their safety developed after World War II. 48 From the start, state agencies Black children from their families and placed them into foster care far more often than white children. Years of 1945 and 1961, the number of non-white children in child welfare caseloads almost doubled, increasing from 14% to 27%. 149 As the modern foster care system developed, various governmental policies have placed Black youth at greater risk of being taken from their families. Discussed above, until the 1950s, poor Black families continued to be denied benefits available to other poor Americans based on federal policies, and then were faced with potential removal of their children into foster care because of unsuitable home conditions. 250 Criminalization of African Americans through the war on drugs also contributed to increasing numbers of Black children being removed from families and placed into the foster care system, as Black men in particular were disproportionately arrested for minor crimes. Part families and often leaving children in the care of extended relatives or strangers. 151 Child welfare agencies tasked with ensuring child safety also often pay particular attention to families experiencing homelessness and housing instability, which African Americans are more likely to experience. 52 Housing instability can also delay the return of a child who has been removed to their family. 53 from 1945 to 1982, the percentage of non-white children in foster care rose from 17% to 47%, with 80% of non-white children being black. 254. During and for many decades after the slavery era, black children were systematically excluded from orphanages and other resources designed to care for poor children. Instead, some free black children were placed in charitable housing for homeless or very low-income adults, where they faced abuse and were sometimes indentured into forced labor, effectively re-enslaving them. Have found that racial discrimination exists at every stage of the child welfare process. Agencies are more likely to be involved with black families than with white families. 255 black parents are more likely to be investigated than other families, because neighbors, teachers, and bystanders are more likely to report black families than white families, likely due to their own racial biases. 56. Equally poor black and white families are compared. Even where the families are considered to be at equal risk for future abuse, state agencies are more likely to remove black than white children from their families. 157. A 2008 study found that black children were 77% more likely than similarly situated white children to be removed from their homes as opposed to receiving in-home services. 158. Black children placed in foster care spend more time there and are less likely to reunify with their families. 259. All other factors being equal, black parents are more likely than white parents to have their parental rights terminated. 60. 2017, the New York Times published evidence of racist foster care interventions in New York City in which black mothers not only had their children taken away, but also faced unfair criminal consequences. 61. One woman, who remained anonymous in the article, called emergency services when she went into premature labor, but then realized her boyfriend could not be reached unless she walked to his location. 62. She left her 6-year-old daughter alone at her apartment and walked to get her boyfriend, returning 40 minutes later to find emergency services and police. 63. Immediately after giving birth, she was handcuffed and placed under arrest for child endangerment, and both of her children, including her newborn baby, were placed in foster care. 64. Scholars argue that the refusal of some academics to consider the narrative experiences of black parents facing foster care interventions such as these echo the arguments of the Moynihan Report. 265. 2008, compared to white children, similarly situated black children were moved from their homes 77% more likely. 1945 to 1982, the percentage of non-white children in foster care rose from 17% to 47%, with 80% of non-white children being black. Scholars have found that racial discrimination exists at every stage of the child welfare process. Consequences of foster care disparities as a group. Children in the foster care system are often subjected to harms as a result of the experience. Children are more likely to be black. 66. For example, Brittany Clark spent 12 years in state care. 67. At age 7, she was placed as the only girl in a long-term home, during which she experienced physical and sexual abuse. 68. After 5 years, Clark was relocated and spent the remainder of her time in foster care, moving from home to home, encountering individuals who cared more about receiving foster care payments than caring for her. 69. This instability, lack of control over circumstances, and repeated loss of connection harms foster children in compounding and lasting ways. 170. Foster children as a group, in which black children are greatly overrepresented, demonstrate various long-term negative outcomes when compared to children not involved in the foster care system. Youth nationally, children who age out of foster care are less likely to be employed or employed regularly, and earn far less than young adults who were not in the foster care system. 71. By age 26, only 3 to 4% of young adults who aged out of foster care earn a college degree. 72. 1 in 5 of these youth will experience homelessness after turning 18. 73. Only half will obtain any employment by 24. 74. Over 70% of female foster youth will become pregnant by 21, and 1 in 4 former foster youth will experience post-traumatic stress disorder. 275. Foster care are also far more likely to be involved with the criminal justice system. Children taken from their families are placed in correctional facilities, and within this group, black children were placed in various penal facilities at rates much higher than white children. 76 Approximately 25% of children in foster care will become involved with justice system within 2 years of leaving foster care, and over half of youth currently in foster care experience an arrest, conviction, or stay at a correctional facility by the age of 17. 77 For children who have been moved through multiple foster care placements, the risk is even higher, with one study indicating that over 90% of foster youth who move 5 or more times will end up in the juvenile justice system. 78 Foster youth, particularly girls, are targeted by sex traffickers, and the criminalization of sex work can funnel these victims of modern-day slavery into the criminal justice system. 79 Result of these severe disadvantages faced by foster youth, some modern scholars have advocated for the abolition of the modern Child Protective Services Agency, arguing that it is inherently racist and should be replaced with a child protection model that implements policies and procedures designed from the ground up to exclude racist presumptions. 280. California. California's child welfare system historically exhibited, and continues to exhibit, the same disparities between black and white families that are discussed above at the national level, generally in even more extreme forms. Example, black children in California make up approximately 22% of the foster population, while only 6% of the general child population. 181 nationally, these percentages are 24% and 15%, meaning that, in California, black children are more than twice as overrepresented in foster care when compared to the national average. 82. 15 Study ranked California among the 5 worst states in foster care racial disparities. 283 Some counties in California, both urban and rural, have much higher disparities compared to the statewide average. Francisco County, which is largely urban and has nearly 900,000 residents, the percentage of black children in foster care in 2018 was over 25 times the rate of white children. 284 In Yolo County, which is largely rural and has approximately 200,000 residents, the percentage of rate pathologizing black families. Children in foster care in 2018 was over 8 times the rate of white children. 285 In 2014, Los Angeles County's Commission on Child Protection issued a detailed report noting widespread failures and shortcomings across the county's child welfare system, failures that fall disproportionately on the overrepresented black population within that system. 86. National statistics. A 2003 study showed that, even when normalizing for other relevant factors like poverty, black children in California are more likely to be removed from their caretakers and placed in foster care than white children. 187 Black children in California are approximately twice as likely as white children to experience a Child Protective Services investigation, and approximately 3 times as likely to spend some time in foster care or experience a termination in parental rights. 8 California youth who enter foster care also consistently exhibit various achievement gaps compared to children with foster care, further worsening disparities for African Americans. Age 24, California foster youth who age out of foster care earn less than half what an average 24-year-old earns nationally. 289 Only 53% of foster youth in California graduate high school on time, compared with 83% of all youth in California. 290. California has made some recent attempts to address these dramatic disparities between foster youth and those not in the foster system, though little has been done to specifically target the racial disparities discussed above. September 2021, California Assembly Bill 12 was passed into law. Foster youth to remain in care through age 21 is a tool to help increase foster youth college attendance rates and address some of the negative consequences of youth aging out of care at 18 with no sources of support. 91 In July 2021, California lawmakers approved the first ever state-funded plan to guarantee monthly cash payments to youth leaving the foster system. 92 All University of California, California State University, and California Community College campuses now have foster youth programs designed to provide help and support to former foster youth on their campuses. 93 Explicitly addressing the racial disparity in Los Angeles County's foster care system, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors created an Office of Equity within the agency administering the foster care system. 94. It was created, however, with no proposed budget or more specific mandates on the office in terms of actual services it will provide. 95.